I'll now call to order the regular meeting dated Thursday, March 21st, 2019. We'll have the invocation and pledge of allegiance by Mr. Brain.
Thank you. Let's pray. Father God, we just love you. We give you all the praise and glory for who you are, and just thank you for this day, Father. We thank you for all your many blessings that you lay upon each and every one of our lives. God, we just ask tonight as we up here, Father, that the decisions we make please you and just glorify you in all that we do. We love you and we thank you. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Raise the flag. Repeat after me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You done?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brain.
Welcome, sir.
Roll call, Ms. Cath.
Yes, sir. Mr. Abshire?
Here.
Mr. Anderpont?
Here.
Mr. Barris?
Here.
Mr. Brain?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Farnham?
Here.
Mr. Guidry?
Here.
Mr. Guillory?
Here.
Mr. Landry?
Here.
Mr. Latour?
Here.
Vice President Mayo? Here. Mr. McMillan?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mrs. Trimmy was unable to attend this evening, and President White.
Here.
You do have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Item 4, take appropriate action on applications for liquor and beer permits. Mr. Crane.
President, we have no applications before you tonight. No action necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Item 5, consideration of approving payment of all current invoices and advised regular monthly budget to actual comparisons. I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Anderpont. Any discussion? Any objection? Item carries. Item 6, consideration of approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the police jury dated February 21st, 2019. I have a motion by Mr. Anderpont and a second by Mr. Bears. Any discussion? Any objection? That item carries. Before I move on, a little housekeeping. We have a public hearing tonight at 6 p.m. However, if we have not yet taken action on item 8, the public hearing will be delayed. The next two agenda items pertain to drainage issues to be addressed tonight. We will take public comment after reading the agenda item, which is number 8. As a reminder, it is only comments. Each speaker will be allowed to no more than 3 minutes to address the jury with those comments. Jurors, during that time, I ask that you hold all comments until all speakers have been addressed, and then at that time, we'll take your comments. Moving on to item 7, consideration of approving the parish-wide drainage committee report dated March 12, 2019, and all recommendations of said committee as follows. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. On March 12, 2019, the Parish-wide Drainage Committee met, and we received a report and recommendations from staff regarding the management and structure for drainage maintenance in the parish. Item B, we recommended the consolidation of gravity drainage districts within the territories of Ward 4, 5, 6, and 7 of Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana into one district to be known as Consolidated Gravity Drainage District Number 1, West Calcasieu of the Parish of Calcasieu. Item C, recommended the consolidation of gravity drainage districts within the territories of Wards 1, 2, 3, and 8 of Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana into one district to be known as Consolidated Gravity Drainage District Number 2, East Calcasieu of the Parish of Calcasieu. That is my report, and I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
We have a motion to receive report from Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion? Any objection? Item 7 carries. Item 8, consideration of adopting an ordinance and ordinance with LSA-R-S 38-1843 to officially create and consolidate gravity drainage district composed of territory within Ward 4, 5, 6, and 7 of Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana, to be known as Consolidated Gravity District Number 1, West Calcasieu of the parish, and further to officially create a consolidated gravity drainage district composed of territories within Wards 1, 2, 3, and 8 of Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana, to be known as Consolidated Gravity Drainage District Number 2, East Calcasieu of the Parish of Calcasieu, to establish and appoint a governing board of commissioners of each district to be comprised of 5 resident property taxpayers, all of whom shall be registered voters, serving for 4-year terms, to establish each board's legal domicile at the parish seat, and to set first meeting of the Board of Consolidated Gravity Drainage Districts Number 1, West Calcasieu, for June 24th at 6 p.m. at 1331 Swisco Road, Sulphur, Louisiana, 70665, and the first meeting of the Board of Consolidated Gravity Drainage District Number 2, East Calcasieu, for June 25th at 6 p.m. at 2301 Lakeshore Drive, Lake Charles, Louisiana, 70601, for organizational purposes and election of officers. The Board of Commissioners of Consolidated Gravity Drainage District Number 1, West Calcasieu, is hereby appointed as follows: Mr. Nathan Spencer, District 11, Mr. Lance Trahan, District 12, Mr. James Perry, District 13, Mr. Damon Goss, District 14, Mr. Rick Fitz, District 15. Board of Commissioner of Consolidation Gravity Drainage District Number 2, East Calcasieu, is hereby appointed as follows: Mr. Mike Whittler, District 6, 7, and 8, Mr. Clinton P. Leger, Districts 9 and 10, Mr. James Gary Gobert, Districts 3, 5, and 9, Mr. Theodore T.A. Jones, Districts 2 and 4, and Mr. Darby Quinn, District 1 and 2, Ward 1. I had a motion
Defer for 6 months.
by Mr. Latour to defer for 6 months, and a second by
I will second it in the spirit of discussion.
Call for question.
Second.
I have a call for question.
Mr. President, actually, it is a motion to defer that has been seconded. That is a debatable motion, so you can open it up for discussion. Doesn't have to be discussion, but you can open it up first before you call the question.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, let's just skip ahead and we'll do a roll call vote on deferring for 30 days or 6 months.
Well,
I want to discuss.
You can discuss
I have
the
a
defer
comment.
item.
All right, then let's open it up for discussion. Ms. Latour.
All right. I'd like to thank everybody for being here, of course, and everybody in the audience. This is a very stringent, and I know it's been a lot of time, and thank you to the staff and everybody who put in the time to figure out everything that has went wrong and got us to this point today. I'll be the first one to acknowledge that there has been faults. There have been several faults that have been found by staff and Alberto, and which I'd say majority of the faults that I've found has been more on the financial aspect of it, which if I would propose that given the 6-month extension, that staff could take over all finances for all the districts. And, you know, we've heard the stories, and Mr. Chris read a long list the other day of the problems. I know it was a lot of, testing of the employees, no investing of the money. You have that list with you, by any chance, that you could?
Oh, I do, and I'll be happy to read it again here in just a
Okay.
little bit.
Well, 98% of it is stuff that could be handled if the parish would assume the responsibility of the finances. Another big issue was the coordination amongst the boards with each other. We could hire an east side and a west side coordinator that could help, say that you had a lateral called, W1, and W1 might go from Ward 8 to Ward 2. You could have a coordinator that could help the ditches to be dug from lateral to lateral or from district to district. I just think that we'd owe it to the people to give the opportunity, at least the boards, to give them the chance. We know everything that's wrong. Let's give them the opportunity to fix their mistakes. Let's not just take it over. If we could do this, I'd be truly grateful, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Latour. Mr. Landry.
What we owe the people is to act on what we've been working on for years. And what they have is an antiquated, broken system. And to postpone this for 6 months is absolutely ridiculous. The things that are before us are not going to be fixed in 6 months. A lot of them can't be fixed with the current structure. We looked at this in 1994, and I say we, that was before I was here. They basically came up with all the same issues. Nothing was done. And that was, the staff did that at the direction of the jury at the time. Again, in 2005. Basically the same findings. Nothing was done. Here we are in 2019. Let's wait 6 more months. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. You need to make up your mind what you want to do, and you make the decision tonight. The right thing to do is to move forward with what's proposed to us here. There's no use in waiting 6 months. And I might as well read it now instead of reading it later. Because I can tell you 6 months isn't going to fix it, and 6 years isn't going to fix it. Yeah, millions of dollars of public money sitting in a non-interest bearing account. Who would run a business like that? I wouldn't. I don't think any of y'all would. What's wrong?
I want to know if you wanted to save it to the end.
Oh, no. Well, I mean, I can. Yeah, we'll be here a while. I guess maybe I'll save it for the next round if you wish. That's fine. There's no problem. Hopefully, most of us are going to agree that there's no use in waiting 6 months. I mean, we're either going to do it or we're not going to do it. We don't need 6 months to go by before we make that decision. I certainly hope not.
We can wait, Mr.
I'm
President.
good for now.
We can
Thank
wait.
you, Mr. Landry. Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have been working on this a long time, and the only thing that I would disagree with Chris on is in 2005, we probably would have got it done then, but Hurricane Rita hit, and it really backed us up off of there. But we have brought it back. We have vetted this through, I think, every proper channel that we can, and tonight's tonight to make a decision whether you're for it or against it. To defer this, I also believe this would be wrong. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Gilroy.
I just want to say, I think in 2000, when I came back in 2012, that we took over a water district that was doing very bad. And after we have taken over that water district, it is much better out there. It is expanding and people are happy. But I just want to throw that in. We took over water district in 2012.
Thank you, Mr. Gilroy. Any other discussion? All right, so the motion on the floor by Mr. Latour and a second by Mr. Anderpont is to defer for 6 months. We'll take a roll call vote on that.
Be a reverse roll call vote. Mr. Scott? To defer 6 months.
No.
McMillan?
No.
Ms. Mayo? No. Mr. Latour?
Yes.
Mr. Landry?
No.
No.
Guidry?
No.
Mr. Farnum?
Yes.
No.
Frame?
No.
Mr. Barris?
No.
Mr. Anderpont?
Yes. No.
Failed. 3 yeas.
Let me just say it's lonely at the top.
With that, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the ordinance LSA RS 381834 to officially create an east and west gravity drainage district and all the rest of these words. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. So now we have a motion to accept by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Landry. Another roll call vote, Ms. Kathy, Mr. Gavin. Oh, I'm sorry, sorry, we got public discussion, I'm jumping way ahead.
Yeah.
But I vote yes.
It gets a little exciting every now and then, Mr. President.
All right, so we're gonna open it for comments. First speaker was Mike Whittler.
President, legal counsel, what are we looking at time-wise for each speaker?
3 minutes.
Well, we initially, President White announced 3 minutes. I don't know how many blue cards were actually turned in.
Thank you for the opportunity to.
One second, sir. We have 8.
Our rules actually limit discussion to 20 minutes, so how about 2.5 minutes per speaker?
Sounds great. Mr. Whittler, you have 2.5 minutes for your comments, sir. If you don't mind, can you name and address, sir?
Mike Whittler, 6980 Tom Hebert Road, Lake Charles, Louisiana. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm concerned about a couple of things. I think that this plan can work. I'm disillusioned at the comment that there were millions of dollars in a drainage district that weren't being utilized. I can assure you that that was not where I come from. If it's broke, we need to fix it. talking about the money, the plan mentions 3 years of financial assistance from the police jury. And a new tax will be offered at a lower rate. And then I guess this financial assistance money, if you'll allow me the privilege of calling it makeup money, will make up the rest of the needs of these new consolidated districts. I'm concerned about what happens at the end of that 3-year period. If this money is designed to go towards capital projects, then my question would be, what defines a capital project? The scope of it or the cost of it? If that could be further explained, perhaps we could get more folks on board with what is fixing to happen here. I'm concerned about representation for the
1 minute. 1 minute.
district as a whole. And I think if this thing's going to work, there can't be any weak links in the chain. And I think some of the districts are doing a really good job, and I believe they will continue to do so. And perhaps they will shine through as an example of the way things could and should be done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Mr. Charlie Atherton. Name and address for the record.
Good evening, Charlie Atherton, 122 Vine Street. When I spoke to you last, I obviously didn't do a very good job of explaining the request because Mr. Sam Gadd told you that what I was asking for could not be done. So I wanted to explain the process. And the process would be for this jury to grant the citizens the process of initiative and referendum. That means the final will of the people through a ballot process. You would have to live with the decision that they made collectively. And the way that the system works would be that one of you jurors tonight would make a motion to grant initiative and referendum to the general public so that the will of the people in the final say would be heard. Then one of you jurors would second that motion for discussion. And then the juror itself would have a discussion about initiative and referendum. And those of you jurors that are in supportive of the final say being with the people would vote for it. But the jurors that prefer to have the old ward boss dictatorship rule with an iron fist would vote against it. If 8 of you voted for it, then you would ask a state legislator to sponsor a bill. Not unlike what you're doing to go from 5 members to 7. Ask the state legislator, one of them,
1 minute.
Stuart Moss, Blade, one of them to sponsor the bill to the legislature. If they take that bill to the legislature will grant it. They will they'll grant the right for the people of Calcasieu Parish alone to have initiative of a referendum. And the process I would see on the jury side is tonight you're simply asking you would be voting to give the people the right. The details would be worked out either in one of your committees or at another agenda item at another meeting. But all we're asking for tonight is that 8 of you jurors agree to allow the people to have initiative and referendum. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
That's time.
We're holding all of our comments to the end, Mr. Atherton. And your time is up for the 2.5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Next speaker is Mr. Ricky Blackwell. Name and address for the record.
Okay, but don't start my time yet, because I thought we had already settled all of this, and I didn't even get my name up on one of those lists right there. Ricky Blackwell, I almost gave you the drainage board address. Ricky Blackwell, 1421 Forest Lane, Sulphur, Louisiana. Y'all know I'm the people of the district of each district voted the way it is, and this affects every property owner in Calcasieu Parish, parish-wide. And one thing I want to bring up is the last two meetings we've had, Mr. Atherton's brought up twice, you know, the fact that that consolidation was never discussed. I'm talking about I've been to every meeting since back to 2015 when they started having them with all throughout the parish. And there was discussion about everything drainage, but there has never been discussion about consolidation. We've been able to come to these meetings and make comments, but there's never been discussion about consolidation. That wasn't because I'm wondering when all of y'all speak and you say, you know, I've got the people calling me and people call me, who are these people? Because I don't know them. I've never seen them saying, hey, we want consolidation. I've never seen that. I just don't, you know, people want smaller government, not bigger government, and I don't think your tax is going to pass. And when that happens, I'm surely hoping you're going to listen to what the voters are telling you when they turn down your tax. And I don't know what your plan B is, to just leave things like they are. That's why I'm going back to saying I'm hoping you're listening to what the people told you if they vote down your tax. And I'm like Mike Whitler. I can't say a lot about all the other districts, but he knows his, and I know the one I was at. We've probably got a close to $1 million facility over there on the other side of the bridge that was paid for by interest. Wasn't paid for by 1 cent of taxpayers' money. It was interest off of their money, but didn't take any tax dollars to build it. I got more than I'm going to do in 2.5 minutes. So, you know, the outlying districts, I think you need to understand that you're not going to have a majority on either vote on either board.
Mr. Blackwell.
Not going to have a majority on either board, and that the majority of districts, which are wards 3 and 4, you're not going to have the opportunity to lower your taxes in about 5 or 6 years when all these industry come off of the tax deferment deals. Thank you very much, and I still think Bernie Sanders would be mighty proud of what y'all doing, socializing.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Next speaker is Mr. Art Little. Name and address for the record, sir.
Art Little, 276 Andrew Young Road, Sulphur, Louisiana. I'm here just to follow up. I got letters out to most of y'all in my comments and concerns in regards to this proposition that's before you tonight. I'm just following it up. My biggest concern is I think is what's going to happen is going to divide this parish like it was back in the 70s, the 60s and the 70s when the parish was divided. I was here in 1973 working as an operator, heavy equipment operator for Calcasieu Parish. I was one of the first ones that moved from Ward 4 to Ward 3 to excavate and dig ditches through these drainage areas. The division that we had back then is taking the last 2 decades for this administration to bring us back together. I think what's going to happen is that the taxpayers in those areas are not going to support the taxes whenever the millage that comes up because they don't know where their money's going. I appreciate your time and effort and all the hard work that's been going into this drainage district study, and I sure hope that y'all can vote in favor of the citizens of the Calcasieu Parish and not support this ordinance. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Mr. Eric Cormier.
Swift? Yeah, better be with us. How y'all doing this evening? I'm Eric Cormier, Vice President of Policy and Strategic Development at the Southwest Louisiana Economic Development Alliance, 4310 Ryan Street. Like we said to the committee a couple of weeks ago, first and foremost, we want to congratulate y'all on putting this together, congratulate the staff, putting the time in that the police jurors put into this. We know this was a good policy. I've spent a lot of time looking at a lot of different policies in and around the state, looking to progress, looking to improve, looking to make quality of life better for Southwest Louisiana. And this one here is probably a grade A because y'all did the research, y'all put the time in, y'all answered the hard questions, and y'all put together legislation that makes a difference. So first and foremost, thank you. We applaud the work that y'all have done. Number two, Southwest Louisiana is looking at over $100 billion in economic development. The world is looking at Southwest Louisiana on a day-to-day basis. This is a type of legislation that makes a difference for a small business or a multi-billion-dollar business that asks a question of, how do I deal with infrastructure? How do I deal with flooding? How do I deal with things that will impact my businesses? Right now, we have a lot of growing pains. There's a lot of work that needs to get done. Y'all have taken a great step in making a difference, and we applaud y'all, and we just ask that y'all support this. The Chamber, the Alliance is 100% behind you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Mr. Hankins, Michael Hankins.
Good afternoon, Michael Hankins, 419 Alamo Street, Lake Charles, 70601. I'm the current president of the Alliance for Positive Growth, which, as you may or may not know, is a group of business owners in the region who have come together to work towards positive growth in our area. First, I want to tell the staff we really appreciate all their efforts in reaching out and being open to this discussion and being available quite a bit. It's been tremendous to work with them. We, of course, support this initiative. We feel like we have an opportunity here to improve the drainage system in Calcasieu Parish, the maintenance program, the capital program, and just generally making it more inexpensive and cost efficient for the residents of Calcasieu Parish. So we support the program and hope you will too today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Last speaker is Mr. Ralph Luling. Name and address for the record, sir.
Ralph Lewing, 2001 Charvet Drive, Lake Charles, Louisiana. Once again, I want to thank y'all for the services y'all provide for this community. I want to thank all the efforts that the staff has put into this. I would like to thank the task force that was formed here not too many months ago, and all the time and effort that they put into this. And just real quickly, one thing is that forming these two districts is going to give us a much more efficient system to manage drainage on the east and west side of the river. We're not creating big government. We're creating a smaller government entity that's going to have representation across the parish on both sides, that the people will be able to see exactly where their representation and the people that are representing them, how they're doing their job, and they're going to actually be able to see where their money's being spent, because their money's not going to be tied up in about 7 or 8 different areas of the parish. It's going to be in one spot. They're going to be able to see where every dollar's spent, every dollar in every area. So at the end of the day, if we're going to quit kicking the can forward, as somebody in here keeps alluding to, we got to do this, and we got to do it now. I mean, the drainage committees and the studies that were done prior to this and done 20 years ago, these are all things that the people in Houston and Conroe, Texas wish they would have done when Harvey hit, because these are the same issues that they battled. Some of the things that we're looking at and some of the things that are going to be implemented today was us studying and learning from other people's mistakes. I think what's going to happen today is if it passes, is going to be a historical event for this parish. This is not a division of the parish. We're not trying to divide the parish. We're trying to facilitate every citizen in this parish. And I think this is going to be a good thing if you vote for it tonight. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Sir, do we have any discussion from the jurors? Yep. We do. Farnham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start my comments off by the fact that I appreciate all the hard work that Alan and Alberto and the entire staff has done on putting all this together. I know that when you go out to do studies, as much as I've heard about consolidation of districts for the 12 years that I've been here, and I'm sure it was going on long before I got here, a lot of times these studies have foregone conclusions that are passed on to the group that is doing the study. So I'm sure that some of that mindset that consolidation is the answer to this was pushed into the minds of those people. There's no doubt in my mind. There are a lot of good merits to this consolidation effort. The fact that we started off with one district and the jurors would have no part of that because they would lose the autonomy of the East and the West. So politics played into that. And therefore we have two districts, which is something that is a little more palatable. What the public is telling me out there, I've not received one phone call other than people that have spoke tonight that are in support of this. I've had dozens and dozens of phone calls about why do we need this? What are we doing this for? And don't support this. And I asked, well, have you been to some meetings? What, are you kidding me? This is a done deal already. Some of the people and some of the social media I've read thought this happened 2 months ago, that it was already done. They didn't have any idea that it was just now coming to a vote. So there's been a lot of good work, and there's a lot of good merits to this. My fear is that when push comes to shove, the tax isn't going to pass. And I have a question for maybe Brian or Alberto or somebody. Why do we need the new tax? What's the purpose of calling the new tax? The primary purpose of it?
Mr. Farnham, in the study, in the proposal, obviously, as you pointed out, and we appreciate the comments, there's a whole lot of, we looked at the whole set of issues. One of which, of course, at some point you go, okay, if it makes sense, and we do believe that in our proposal, for efficiencies and better operations and finance, so forth, to have 2 districts instead of 7, you obviously still need a maintenance tax. We're not saying you can't, you would still have district operations that are maintenance operations. So the question then is, so what should that tax be? We looked at that a lot. Obviously, that's a big discussion item. Well, if you have 2 districts, then each district by nature, and this is any special district, you would have a tax for that district. So I know that sounds kind of obvious, but that's how you do it. We looked at how you finance that and say, okay, you've got districts that do maintenance and some capital. Because drainage districts in state law, that doesn't say that it's just for one or the other. And historically, until about 5 years ago, the parish has been involved in some drainage capital, but not that much. So in the proposal, it was very much a part of the idea that says, look, and Alan and his meetings with the coalition, that's districts that started before this study even got off the ground, we need to migrate and utilize parish monies. Centrally, we need to prioritize projects across the parish and don't put all that burden on the districts for capital. So that was a lot of the thinking. And so if you're out there, and we have to play with the hand that's been dealt. And what I mean, if you were starting from a blank slate, you could come up with a millage that you felt was right. Well, we're taking 7 existing millages to go to 2. How do you do that? Well, you try to take a look and say, what is it you need to where you don't hinder those districts, but you also take into account that if the parish is going to get more involved in capital, we can take a look at that, and you're always looking for that balance of good service, but be good with the taxpayers' money, and that's how we landed with those rates. But you need 1 rate per district. So that, I hope gives a little bit of
So,
background.
I guess the question really boils down to, right now, like on the west side, we have three different,
Yes, sir. You have
buckets of
3
money.
millages, that's
And
correct.
the proposal is to propose a new tax that will replace those
Yes, sir.
old existing taxes. Now,
Yes, sir.
why do you need one tax instead of three?
Because if you have a district, and look, I think you can compare that to mosquito control, you compare it to libraries. If it's one service in one area in that service, you want everybody paying the same thing. If you have one district, to use your example in West Calcasieu, same on the east. You don't want different people in one created consolidated district, which this would be, to be paying different things. It's just a basic function of taxation to try to have everybody paying the same rate in that legal district.
It makes things more proficient, basically.
Yes, I mean,
It spreads the water evenly.
Yes, sir.
Across all the areas
It
and breaks down a lot of barriers that exist today.
From a taxation standpoint, yes, it's.
So, I guess by talking about that, there's some of the areas of operation that, say the tax doesn't pass, you can't shift. One of the things that are on the paper that really are the highlights and high points of this is that you shift to a watershed-based approach on the floodplain management. If the tax doesn't pass, you can't do that.
If the tax doesn't pass, I'm answering you on the legal.
If the tax doesn't pass, then it doesn't allow us the flexibility to spend money across the tax district border.
Yeah, just to be clear, yeah, you're right, the district taxes in place today, the taxes, not the boards, because that would change if this is approved. They would remain in place until anything else might change. So yes, to answer your question, you'd still have, if that tax is put on the ballot and voted on and not passed, you would still have in place those 3 existing taxes in those legal districts. You're correct.
And by law, the monies collected within those taxing districts cannot be spent outside of those taxing districts.
That is correct, barring, I know you're not suggesting this, I'm just saying you can do some kind of joint services agreements, but it would be for a fee. So they answer your question.
It would become very cumbersome.
You are correct.
Very cumbersome to do
right,
that
and
on
we've
a
been
daily
clear
basis.
that even if this does pass, meaning the board consolidation, until that vote would be taken and passed, that's exactly what has to happen.
Exactly how you have to operate until that
you're
tax
correct.
comes up for a vote.
Yes.
So another thing, the efficiencies and resources, as water adheres to no political boundaries, that's another thing that can't be accomplished until that tax passes. The third thing, develop and implement projects at the district level with the big picture in mind rather than separate and apart from one another. None of that can happen if the tax doesn't pass. You can prioritize, the board would be able to prioritize some projects a little better. That's one of the good things that comes out of it. But you're still restricted by the monetary boundaries that exist today and the disparity between the millages. So another question is until then, you're going to add another layer of management. You're going to put a supervisor over all the supervisors, right? That was one of the components of this. How do you break up and pay from different taxing districts for the consolidated services? Is there some kind of formula in place that District X pays this much of the percentage of it? I mean, there's a lot of details that have to be that had to have been already worked out, or we shouldn't be moving forward today. You can't go into this thing blindly without all these details being ironed out.
That's correct, but that's what the transition period's for. We recognize you'd have to have a system in place. Anything that you transition is going to have transition issues. It's not,
There's a difference between transition and details. You know, you work out the details and then
Well,
you transition into those details.
Absolutely.
You don't put the
That's
cart in
why
front of
we
the horse.
asked this not be effective until June 24th, and I can assure you, if this is passed as early as next week, this becomes a very high priority to get these worked out. And that's one of them, and that would be up to that board. I would like to just address one of your questions. You asked, so you can't really do anything. The fact that you have one board looking at the whole west side or east, you do have the ability to run that on a watershed basis. Yes, there'd be some restrictions on the money, no question. But they would look at the whole west side and be able to say, if we do this in Ward 5, how will it affect Ward 4? And it's the same people looking at the whole picture. So I would say that is an advantage.
Today that's doing that.
I'm sorry?
We're supposed to have a coalition of people put together today that's supposed to have been doing this for the past 2 years.
Well, this is the legal board, though, responsible for that. The coalition is to work together for joint benefit. It's not a legal entity, if you're referring to the staff thing that Alan is.
So one other aspect of this is all the monies that have been, some of these boards have a pretty good amount of money that they've got in the bank.
Yes, sir.
And money that has been collected in a district can never be spent outside of that district.
That is correct.
Even if a consolidated tax is passed, right?
Right, that would have to be spent down, if you will, over some period of time in that existing tax as it is today. You can't switch that. Now, any new taxes, if it's replaced, that won't be a restriction, but you're correct. Until that balance is spent, it would have to stay in that original district it was voted for.
So I guess I asked this question many months ago: is what's Plan B if the tax doesn't pass? And Plan B is to operate in this fashion of, by our own admission, won't work. It won't work. That's the necessity for the new tax, is because the 3-bucket system will not work. It's too cumbersome, too many restrictions to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. So by our own admission, if the tax doesn't pass, we should go back to the way we were doing it before. So
No, we don't say that.
I'm going to offer an amendment tonight that if the tax doesn't pass, I will be the first one to support this if the tax was to pass. I think it's a good plan, but if the tax doesn't pass, we haven't accomplished a thing, because the silver bullet that's going to fix drainage in this district is us, the police jury, being involved in paying for these capital projects. That's the silver bullet that's going to fix the drainage. So I'm going to offer that in the form of a motion that if the tax doesn't pass, that we revert back to the old system, that we're going to do it.
Second.
In a second.
Can I make a
Mr.
comment?
Bean.
Clarify, because this is important. The plan is proposed is two consolidated districts. The police jury would not call that tax. The boards would. So it's not your decision to do that if you pass this. It's the boards. We purposely don't want to recommend anything because we have a lot of faith that those boards, if that happens, will analyze it, decide what the next step is. We're certainly there. We want to work with them, but it's not a police jury tax. Secondly, by trying to make a motion to do something conditioned upon later, you are taking not only something away from this future jury, it is a future set of jurors who will be elected newly in a few months. And it's not about drainage. It is not a healthy thing in a democracy to have conditioned, if this happens, then do this. Can picture yourself being a new juror elected, and you can't do anything because the guys before you said, we said if A, B, and C happens, then do D. I think that is very unhealthy. Bigger point, it's not a police jury tax. That board will have to make the decision, and I hope the jury's there for them. Decide that at the time. This would be premature to ask, what do you do if it fails? Absolutely, it's an issue. It's not going to be, phase 1 is not good for 100 years, but I think you really should wait till after that happens and then see where you are. That's my opinion.
Legal, do we need to take a roll call on this to accept this amended part?
Well, there is a motion and a second to amend, so yes, you'll have to take action on that motion. However, I do caution that even an amendment like that that says we're going to do something in the future down the road can easily be nullified by the jury that sits whenever that happens. So it's a
Fine, I'm fine if they want to revisit that. But I
Yeah,
would like it to be revisited.
Sure.
And be forced to be revisited.
That's
Not-
fine.
Not at somebody's discretion.
Sure. And again, I tried to write down the motion as you made, and I failed in that respect.
I
So
definitely want it to be a legal motion.
No.
That is something
You're-
that we can do, but I want this to be revisited if the tax doesn't pass, because by our own admission, this system will not work with the 7 district taxes coming in.
Sure. And I guess my concern in that motion is you're putting a motion that would ask for action and perhaps require action of a future police jury that may or may not ever come to pass. You certainly made the motion. It's got a second, so we have to take action on it. I actually would recommend that you consider denying that motion, just because it places a burden on a future jury that I don't even know if it would be binding at that point. I don't know how it would work, honestly. But there is a motion and a second. And if you could restate the motion, I'm sorry, I did not, wasn't able to write it all down. And then, yes, you will debate that motion.
I'd like to repeat your motion, Mr. Farnham.
That if at one shot the tax doesn't pass, this is basically a referendum vote of the people of whether they accept this or not, because these districts belong to them. They don't belong to us. They belong to the people of Calcasieu Parish. And if the tax does not pass and the people do not support this, then we go back to the system that we had. Because they do support that one.
So if I can restate it, if taxes that may be called in the future to fund the consolidated districts fail, that the police jury return to these 7
Solve the
district systems.
consolidated district and return to the system that we had.
Thank you.
And I second that.
All right, Mr. Landry.
Ms. Landry, third.
Thank you, yeah. Yeah, you know better than that. Thank you, Mr. President. After that motion's made and then it's explained, you would think you would withdraw the motion, but of course he's not going to. That's not our decision. It's the board. You still have a board system. You have a board system now with whatever, there's 7 boards. You go into 2, you're trying to make decisions for the board. That's for the board to decide what's going to happen after that, not the police jury. I don't know. I don't get that. And I do very much disagree with you. Going to what we're going to in this next stage is much better than what you have right now. You have people that are looking at all these watersheds and how they work together. And you know what? If it takes somebody in finance to do the detailed work of making sure that the money's being spent, you know what? Then so be it. You're way, way, way better off with that system in that form than what you've got today. Hopefully that's not where it ends up. I mean, most people that I know would like for their taxes to go down, like for real. Not in some promise, because that's one thing that has been said. Oh, we were going to lower our taxes anyway in a few years when these projects. Well, you know what? The district's been in force since, 84, I think is the year it was formed? How many times did the taxes go down? There's been many, many, many projects in this parish. I'm talking about multi-million-dollar projects that have came on the tax rolls, and I hate to say it because I'm not 100% sure, but I would just go ahead and go out there and say that taxes have never come down one time. I would go ahead and probably say that. So they're not going to come down. In this plan, they're going to come down. We're going to lower them. What makes it right that you got a friend or a family member and they live in a district and they're paying 15 mills, and then you got somebody else that's paying 5 mills, and we live in the same parish. We're all supposed to be one. We're supposed to work together. It's not my money and their money and all of that. We're supposed to work together. All this division gets you nowhere. But I just don't understand. In my opinion, and I've said it probably 3 times, but we would be much better off, even though the money continues to be divided with the tax failing, than you are today. So I would please ask my fellow jurors to vote against Mr. Farnham's motion.
Landry. Mr. Bears.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Gilry, real quick, something that just hair went up. You said something about a water district and we taking over something and it's working fine. If this happens, we ain't taking over nothing. I want to clarify that right now. That's how bad things get out. This is the first time I've seen this language here. Something that sticks out big to me to each board's legal domicile as the parish seat. Who wants to take a crack at that?
That's a state law, Mr. Barris.
What does that mean? The mailbox at 1331 Swisco Road still works. Why can't that be why do they have to have one?
That is in the state law that's under, it's phrased Consolidated Gravity Drainage District.
Why is this the first time any of us are hearing that? I mean, golly, he was saying, no, the parish is not doing that. The parish is not going to go under the parish, and here we go. We're going to put all y'all's address in one place right here in Lake Charles, Louisiana.
No, as a matter of fact.
What does that mean?
I don't know why they did it.
Shaking the head. What does the parish seat mean?
I'll be happy to.
The parish seat is the city where the police jury sits. Parish seat.
And that is?
And that is Lake Charles.
Okay.
The meeting, but it's a technicality. The addresses here are for where the meetings would take place, and once these boards meet, they can make the meeting place wherever they want. That domicile doesn't mean anything other than that's what state law says.
I just want to make sure that that's all right out here in front of everybody.
And Mr. Beam is...
Because there are people that read this stuff.
Yes. And Mr. Beam is correct. It's the state law does require that when it's formed, it sits in the parish seat as the meeting. And so the parish seat is Lake Charles, where the police jury sits, where the police jury can be served, those things. The parish seat is always been Lake Charles.
All right.
A motion to change the parish seat.
What'd you say?
Wherever they want it, I don't know.
Yeah. That big an issue, we can change it tonight.
I have the
Point of
floor.
order,
No,
please.
it's not real.
I have the floor. Point of order. I'm not going to go over the part about whether or not a tax doesn't pass or not. I have those same fears. I represent an area that, we were speaking at a town hall meeting the other day, and I represent an area that half of the area that floods a lot is from tidal drainage ditches, laterals and such. The other half, when the SRA does their business. So when this tax comes up across my district, I got half of it that they're going to be tuned into it. They got another half, they could give a rip. So how do you pass that? How does something pass in an environment like that? And look, I don't care about anybody from the east side snickering at me or snickering at us. Y'all got y'all's own problems. When I'm speaking from our problem. So just hold the phone on all the jokes. But that's the type of thing we're going to be looking at in 3 years. Trying to pass a tax, trying to sell a tax to people who don't even have, they don't care. Doesn't affect them. That's an uphill battle to me. Doing something up a rope. I represent the haves and the have-nots. Me and the have-nots, we got bigger land, but that's all right. I gotta do what the folks who put me here want me to do. There are a lot of good things about this, a lot of great things, but there's it's an if-then statement. There's a lot of things that this is gonna happen, then this will happen later on, and, you know, you come back to the tax thing. You know, I'm not totally sold on that. But I do not want this to be taken as any shot or at any of the parish administration and staff who've worked hard through all these meetings. But, you know, I'm not gonna go over any other concerns, but I do share some of the ones Mr. Farms had. I appreciate the time, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Guidry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could I just have Mr. Alberto come to the mic for just a minute? One of the things that I heard that kind of disturbed me, because, you know, when we sit up here and we make bylaws and all those things, people are actually out there watching and they're listening to what's being said. And the comment that was said that a lot of people didn't even know about what we were discussing tonight, some of them heard it for the very first time. And that bothers me because, you know what, I've sat up here for 16 years and I've never known this governing body to do anything that's behind closed doors. We has been as transparent as you can possibly be as any governing body. And the comment that I heard tonight was made that some of the people wasn't even aware of what was being discussed tonight. Mr. Alberto, can you enlighten me on how many meetings we've had on this issue that we're discussing tonight?
Yes, sir. Well, the police jury approved moving forward with the drainage study in early 2018. The study was released in October of 2018, which included the recommendations to consolidate the gravity drainage districts. So the actual recommendations have been out since October of 2018. Since then, we've had several committee meetings for that sole purpose of maintaining transparency to ensure that we gave adequate opportunity for folks to come up, make requests, have questions, get clarifications, and things like that. We still work with folks to answer any questions, and we're always happy to. So yeah, it's been we've had several meetings dated back since early 2018, and it's been released since October of 2018.
Okay, because I didn't want the general public looking and the people that we represent, which are our constituents, to have anything to make them think that we were doing anything that was behind closed doors. Because when you make statements like that and don't follow up on them, sometimes people tend to believe what's being said. But I want to make clear that tonight that wasn't the case. For whoever's out there that's watching, that's not how we operate here. Thank you, Mr. Alberto.
Farnham.
Thank you. I guess the point about it not being our decision to consolidate this thing, it's exactly our decision. Or these 7 districts out here would be making the decision for themselves to consolidate instead of bringing it to us. It's absolutely our business, or we wouldn't be called to be here tonight to do what we're doing tonight. We can go for a vote on the amendment.
We still have some more discussion. Mr. Latour.
Just one last thing to, comment was made about the tax has never been dropped since the 80s. This is the first time that I have knowledge that the parish has actually agreed to take over capital projects. If just our current tax roll in my district, we might be at 10 mills. If the parish was to assume capital projects, we could drop ours to 5. So I definitely do agree with Mr. Farnham. If the tax is not passed, that it should revert back, and I'd hope that the parish would still do the capital projects and we could still save the average taxpayer money if the parish would still do the capital projects. Across the board, it would save everybody on their taxes. I yield back. Thank you.
All right, at this time, we're going to take a vote on the amended version Mr. Farnham has stated that was seconded by Mr. Latour. This is only on the amended part. Ms. Kathy, roll call, please.
Mr. Abshire.
No.
Mr. Angelpont.
Yes.
Barris.
Yes.
Mr. Brame.
No.
Mr. Collins.
No.
Mr. Farnham.
Yes.
No.
Hillary.
No.
Mr. Landry.
No.
Mr. Latour.
Yes.
Ms. Mayo. No. Mr. McMillan.
Nope.
Scott.
No.
Motion failed, 4 yeas, 8 nays.
Thank you, Ms. Kathy. Mr. Farnham would like to speak again.
One more time. I have a concern about the capital project aspect of this. proposal. Where are we gonna get the money for our capital projects?
I address
Dean.
that, and I'll ask Tammy if needed to get into detail. Any capital projects that the police jury would help with that involves something, let's call it under the drainage boards or drainage districts, would come from combination of, there are 3 different taxes, Mr. Farnham, that you can use for this, and it depends on, what it is and which ones we take it from. You have the 2 sales taxes and a property tax. The first one is the 1.5 cent sales tax, originally passed in 1992. You have the 1 cent sales tax, originally passed in 1984. And you have the, what's called road and drainage property tax. That one's parish-wide. I think it was passed in the 50s. Each of those combined is eligible to be used for those purposes, meaning drainage-related costs. Obviously, like all your other departments and everything, it's budgeting, it's prioritizing, so there's a lot of discretion, and it depends on what the jury would pass. But to answer your question, those are the 3 revenue sources that can be used for this.
So my question about tax number 1, the 1.5 cent sales tax,
Yes, sir.
was a tax dedicated for road and garbage.
The allowable costs in that are, you have road costs, it's allowed for drainage costs, it's allowed for solid waste. And I believe that one, Tammy can help me here, that's actually got an allowable for transit costs, just to try to cover all the bases.
I think that on that tax, the way the people voted for it was for road improvements. It was the tax that was passed to overlay and blacktop roads in Calcasieu Parish and provide for garbage pickup. I think somewhere in the past few years, we sat and discussed about using it for roadside drainage to help support our road structure. I don't believe anywhere in any of those discussions was gravity drainage capital improvements out in the wild blue yonder out there. So I really disagree with that fund being used for any type of activity outside of a road right-of-way or garbage pickup. I don't believe that's what the people voted for. Second tax, the 1 cent tax, what is it stated that it's for?
It is primarily what we call a public works tax, and it allows, when you say public works, it can be used for roads, capital, maintenance, and the drainage thereof. And legally, they are both perfectly legal to use for drainage. The reason in the last few years we have come to y'all with that is we've recognized, if you go back to the mid-'80s and early '90s, you're right, roads were a big deal, and they still are. We are not going to hurt one to pay for the other. But over the past several years, which is why y'all got us studying drainage in 2014, is we have a very big demand for drainage improvements. And we look at every potential source of revenue so where you don't have to ask for a new tax and use that money wisely if we have it. We're blessed to be in a good economy. We know it won't last forever. We feel very confident, though, that the drainage demands have grown a lot since those taxes. And we need to use that as best we can for all the legal things. Y'all have the ultimate decision every year when you pass a budget, though. Whether it's all for roads, all for drainage, a little for this, a little for that. This current budget year and the previous one, y'all have decided, you approved it, to put that money in the budget for drainage, and we have to have those legal resources to do it. So that's a decision, and the jury, we certainly will follow whatever y'all decide in the future. But I want to be clear that that has always been legal to use that for drainage. And that's, I suspect, why it was all included at the time in case you need it for that. It's not that restrictive is what I'm saying.
I absolutely believe that we're being creative in our determination of the fact that we're going to use this outside of the road right-of-ways. All of those two of the three were created for in between the right-of-way stripes, for projects for drainage, road maintenance, anything associated with work inside of our right-of-ways. And we've always denied use of any of those funds to go out and be used in a gravity drainage project. The Road and Drainage Trust Fund, on the other hand, has funded many gravity drainage projects over the years. Its primary purpose was for one or the other, drainage or roads. Sam, this question's for you. What would it take to get an Attorney General's opinion of whether we're doing this the right way or not? What do you need out of to request that?
To request, and the consolidation, the item for consolidation, whether we're doing this correctly? Is that what the question is, for consolidation or for taxation?
No. Just for the use of those funds for capital projects.
Well, and Mr. Farnham, we, as Mr. Beam said, when we have a tax issue, we go over things with a fine-tooth comb as far as the budget goes, what we can use, what we can legally use. You're absolutely right. Whatever the tax call says, we are bound by that tax call. We read that tax call. I've read it probably every couple of months and get questions all the time, can we use it for this? And I give opinions. And certainly, I can always ask for an Attorney General's opinion to see what we can use certain things for, but
I would definitely like to see that happen. I don't know if it takes a jury action.
No, it doesn't.
It's something that you have the latitude to do. I've heard various details on how you actually get an Attorney General's opinion.
I can certainly get with you later and we can figure that one out.
Because I think just because we agreed somewhere along the line to use some of those monies for roadside drainage doesn't give us the latitude to use it outside of our right-of-way. That's my opinion, and I'd like to know if another source would agree with that or not. If it's perfectly legal, then that's great, but I don't think that's what it was intended for. I'd like to know from the highest opinion we can get in this state.
We can certainly do that. In asking Attorney General's opinion, we've done it before. We can certainly visit it again.
Thank you. Are you?
Mr. Bears.
Thank you. Should all this come to pass, can we get just a quick timeline on the Senate or the resolution or the bill about the 7-member? When, how long will we stick with the 5-member, and then when does it flip the switch to the 7? Please.
Yes, sir. I will answer that. I believe there is a very good chance the bill in the legislature, and just so remind everybody what Mr. Bear is talking about, this is a local bill, they call it, means it just applies to Calcasieu Parish, that would allow this police jury, if it voted, you'd have to vote it, to go from 5 to 7 members for consolidated gravity drainage districts. That session, I think, ends in early June. I think there is a good chance that, if passed by the legislature and approved by the governor, could be in place prior to June 24th, which is the effective date of this proposal. So it is conceivable it would start with 7 members and not 5. Now, it will be close, but so I want to be careful. I think you have a meeting June 20th. A regular police jury meeting, not the board.
Right.
If that was legal and a law by then, you could on your own agenda that night take action to add 2 members to the board to where their first meeting actually has 7 members. Now, I'm not going to guarantee you that. If it's not then, it's very shortly thereafter. So I think that would be ideal. That way this issue of is there 5, is there 7 is not an issue. So I hope that helps.
Have we communicated to our delegation the gravity of this situation?
Was that a pun? I'm sorry. I'm trying to. They are gravity drainage districts. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be like.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Latour. Mr. Landry. Mr. Anderpont.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, ask for your indulgence for just a few minutes. Years ago, the United States of America gave the Panama Canal away. One of the people who voted to do that was Senator Russell Long. He was asked a question by the media, why would you vote to do that when in fact your constituents back home are opposed to you doing that? His answer was, and you can look it up, the people back home don't know what's good for them. I know what's good for them. Now, I don't know what the issues are in Ward 1, Ward 3, Ward 7, or where you want to go, but I know what the position is of the people that I represent in Ward 4. And before I go there, I want to thank Alberto and Alan and the entire administration for the hard work that they have put into there. I want to thank the chairman of the committee for his indulgence and putting up with the committee members while we were in session looking over the whole agenda. Yesterday, I was inundated with phone calls and not one was in favor of what we're discussing here at this moment, all anti. My personal feelings stay at the front door when I get here. Unlike Russell Long, I believe that the people do know what they want. I can't speak for the other wards. I am speaking for Ward 4 and Ward 4 only. I explained to the people yesterday that regardless of where I went, be a grocery store where I was always confronted with antis, which is not good for us to do this. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to vote no tonight because I, unlike Russell Long, will represent the people who put me here. I am a server of the people. I am not a servee. And that being said, Mr. President, I yield back.
Anderpont, do we have any other discussion? All right, so right now we've got a motion on the floor to approve and a second or by, Mr. Scott made the motion to approve and a second by Mr. Landry. Roll call, Ms. Kathy.
Okay, this will be a reverse roll call this time. Mr. Scott? McMillan?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo? Yes. Mr. Latour?
No.
Mr. Landry?
Yes.
Mr. Guillory?
Yes.
Mr. Guidry?
Yes.
Mr. Farnham?
No.
Yes.
Mr. Brame? Barris?
No.
Mr. Anderpont?
No.
And Mr. Abshire?
Yes.
There were 9 yeas, 4 nays. The motion carried.
8 has been approved. Moving on to agenda item number 9, which is hold a public hearing at 6 p.m.
Mr. President, maybe a recess?
No. Let's go.
No? No? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Maybe after the public hearing.
Let's go. We ready? Let's go.
Ordering said, we're holding a public hearing at 6 p.m. Ordering said owners to show cause to why the structures of said property should not be condemned. Mr. Robinson.
Good evening. Our first structure on the agenda tonight is at 2338 Foster Lane. This is in the Westlake area. We have one house. It's the owner is Royal Soil Properties, and we're recommending this structure be condemned and removed in 30 days.
I'm going to make a motion to defer for 30 days. The
Second.
owner is
Second.
here, and I could get him up. He is going to take care of this problem for us. But my motion is defer for 30 days.
We have a motion and a second to defer for 30 days. Would the owner like to come up, Mr. David Charney?
Yeah, I just want a discussion while I'm deferring it.
And Mr. President, if he's okay with the deferral, there
Yeah,
won't
there's
be
no
any.
need for him to speak on that issue.
Sir, are you okay with deferring this item for 30 days?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. That's all.
Well, I would like to say something.
Okay, go
This
ahead.
is my first experience here with the civic class I had way back in high school. I like to see that it's alive and well. I just want to say I appreciate your all service, and I know you have a very complicated problem here, and I just think that you're all doing a good job. So thank you.
Mr. President.
And I appreciate the 30 days.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McMillan.
The house is under contract. It's going to be closed within 30 days, and they're either going to renovate it or tear it down under their expense. So that's why I want to just give them a little time. It will change in 30 days. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Johnson.
Thank you, sir. We had a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Latour to defer for 30 days on item A. Mr. Robinson, can you continue?
650 Evans Street. This is in the North Sulphur area. We have one manufactured home here. The owner is a Dorsey James Hance. We recommend that this structure be condemned and removed in 30 days.
Move to condemn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to condemn. Motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Abshire. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this item? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this item? Hearing none, we'll move to condemn.
Discussion.
Any discussion? Any objection? That item is condemned. C.
3643 Davis Road. This is in the Westlake area. It's one house. The owner of record is Terry Michael Fletcher. We recommend this structure be condemned and removed in 30 days.
Move to condemn.
Thank you.
A motion by Mr. McMillan to condemn and a second by Mr. Guidry. Is there anybody in the audience that'd like to speak on this item? Anyone in the audience like to speak on this item? Do we have any discussion? Any objection? That item is condemned.
House and
D.
the item.
This is 3630 Highway 27 North. This is in the North Sulphur area. It's one house. The owner is Carolyn Donata Cox et al. We recommend this structure be condemned and removed in 30 days.
Motion to condemn.
Second.
A motion by Mr. McMillan to condemn and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Anyone in the audience? Any further discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, D is condemned. E.
This is 727 Williams Drive. This is in the South Lake Charles area. We have one accessory building here. The owner is a David Joseph K. Edux. And
Move
we
be condemned.
recommend this structure be condemned and removed in 30 days.
We have a motion by Mr. Scott to condemn and a second by Mr. Latour. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Anyone in the audience? Any further discussion? Any objection? E is condemned. F.
This is 738 Bennett Road, South Lake Charles area. It's one accessory building. The owner is a Timothy Wayne Thibodeau Edux. We recommend this structure be condemned and removed in
Move to
30
condemn.
days.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Scott to condemn and a second by Mr. Abshire. Is anybody in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Anyone in the audience? We have discussion. Mr. Landry.
Evidently, we don't have it. Are you familiar with it, Mr. Scott?
I am, but
Okay.
I am a little confused. I think the general public would like to see what we're talking about.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
getting a little confusing on the pictures. that
I'm
we could,
sure, I'm sure the motion is correct, but
Yeah.
you would feel better if I could see it.
They should have the photograph somewhere.
I'm sure it's coming in just a minute. Or we can pass one around maybe manually. I mean.
I'm okay with it.
You've seen it, I'm sure you've seen it. No, that's Williams Drive. We've already done that. I think that's
Nothing
it
to
right
see
there.
here.
Maybe it's already gone.
Boy, that's swift justice.
They've cleaned it up. They did a good job,
put
too.
it
You
in
can't
that
even
envelope.
tell it was there. It's in the folder, yeah.
Like a little old folder.
Nothing to see there, Chris.
So,
I'm okay with moving on unless y'all want to.
Ben,
You okay, Mr. Scott? We're okay.
If
We
the
do
owner
have a
ain't-
motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Any objection? That item is condemned. G.
G, this is 5387 Leah Drive. This is the South Lake Charles area. It's one
Move to
house.
condemn.
The owner is Ronald James Harris Sr. at Ux. We recommend this structure be condemned and removed in 30 days.
We have a motion by Mr. Scott to condemn and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Anyone in the audience? Do we have any further discussion? Any objection? G is condemned. H.
This is 4509 Ogden Road. This is in South Lake Charles. There's one house and an accessory building. That's it. And the owner is Justin Brant Granger. We recommend these structures be both condemned and removed in 30 days.
One question before my motion. Wes, is this the house and the accessory, both of them?
Yes.
So the house is condemnable?
Yes.
Did you ever talk to Justin?
Yeah, he called me day before yesterday, and he claims he has a contractor lined up to demo all structures.
Okay, so we'll go ahead, I'll make a motion to go ahead and condemn it, and if he's gonna do
Yeah, he indicated that's what his plans
that.
are.
All right, that's my motion. To condemn.
Second.
We have a motion to condemn by Mr. Brame and a second by Mr. Collins. We have discussion. Mr. Landry.
Is that house we went to? That's a crack house. I'm telling you, they got needles all over the place in that thing. It's open to the public, and there was a little accessory building in the back, same problem. They wanted to rezone at one time, okay.
Yeah, duplex.
I thought it looked familiar.
Thank you, Mr. Landry.
All crack houses don't look exactly the same.
All right, so the motion on the floor is to condemn by Mr. Brame and a second by Mr. Collins. Any further discussion? Any objection? H is condemned. Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
you.
Moving on to 10. Consideration of adopting an ordinance approving the following rezoning application, 1948 Horseman Road in Ward 7, to rezone from general commercial C2 to recreational vehicle park, or to allow a recreational vehicles park.
Move to, I know it's not it's not uphold anymore. It's,
Correct.
I'm
It's either
sorry.
to approve or to not.
motion to approve planning and zoning.
No.
Deny zoning, rezoning.
Wanting to,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, the motion
Legal.
you're looking for, Mr. President, is either a motion to approve rezoning with conditions or a motion to deny rezoning.
Motion to deny with rezoning.
Deny rezoning. So motion to deny rezoning.
so we have a motion by Mr. Barris to deny rezoning and a second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion?
Mr. President, the applicant may be here.
I have no speakers on that item.
Okay?
Sir, did you fill out a blue slip and turn it into the front of the room? All right. Would the applicant like to come up and speak on the item then?
Yes, sir, I'd like to, Mr. Ricky LaFleur, speak for me.
All right. Name and address for the record, sir.
Name is Ricky LaFleur. Address is 120 South State Street in Abbeville. I'm here with Mr. Dale White. He asked me to come speak tonight briefly.
You have 3 minutes, sir.
All right, thank you. Mr. White, who's the mature man sitting in the back in the camouflage cap, asked that he be granted the right, instead of putting 4 RVs on that site, 2. He faxed this week to the Division of Planning his amended plan, and it's solely for the purpose of seasonal use by his horse trainers where they stay on occasion. It's cost prohibitive for him to have to get other accommodations for them. Mr. White's willing to comply with all of the 7 requirements I spelled out on this agenda. The site also is concreted and has a home on there where he frequents, and all he's trying to do, which he's been having a couple RVs on and off that site for years, up until the latest ordinance was adopted regarding the recreational vehicle park ordinance. but he just wants to be able to have seasonal use of it for his horse trainer and next to his home. And that's why he asked for this to be considered tonight before the police jury. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Bears?
Mr. Crane. Sir.
Do we have any questions for the applicant?
I don't at this time. Mr. Crane, where
Yes, sir.
are we on
Thank you.
this?
Okay, so basically, the ordinance, by definition of a recreational vehicle park, is 3 or more RVs.
Okay.
Okay? He originally wanted 4 RVs, and prior to that, now he had placed the RVs on there without benefit of permit. Okay, so we went out and investigated this and determined that there was a violation. And he has paid the civil penalty and so forth, and then he applied for this rezoning in order to be able to maintain the RVs on the property. So during the course of the application, he did submit a plan that showed that, you know, for 2 RVs. However, there's nothing in your ordinance that says that you can have 2 RVs on your property. We have a permissible ordinance. In other words, the property is zoned commercial. And there's nothing under the permitted uses that would allow for an RV or anything. Now, he brings up the fact that there are seasonal uses allowed in C1 in commercial. That's for fireworks stands. It's not for someone that trains horses or anything like that. It's not specific. So, again, we're trying to work with him and trying to get him in compliance. However, I did not support this. I did not recommend, because to the south of him, directly south, we've recently had an approved request for a minor subdivision where they're building homes. This is A1, some of that property is A1, and so really that property to the south of him is trending more towards single-family residential. That's basically where we are. Of course, the board denied him last night.
Correct.
The other night.
All right, thank you. I just have, I'm going to still keep my motion the same, but, and you and I have spoken multiple times, we've really got to get a handle, put a sticky note on this particular excerpt, and add that to the list of ones that we really need to dial in, as it pertains to these these onesies and twosies. That's where we're having the problem. And I think everybody will agree. It's not the 5, 6, 7s. It's the onesies and twosies that pop up, and everybody starts telling off on each other, and it's a big,
Well, and I know it's been difficult because in the parish, in the unincorporated area, in the on A1 property along our river systems, we've had folks that camp along those river systems. And there have been occasions where those have been approved temporarily.
Right.
You still have to get a permit, but they're approved temporarily for camping purposes. And of course, with all the industrial growth that we've had a lot of workers coming in this area. They bring their RVs in and they want to park them on properties. And so we've had a rash of that. And we have been going out and trying to, cite those ones that are obvious to us. And we've been doing that. I mean, it's a lot. So.
Well, much like we've redone the drainage code and, some of the developmental code. I mean, I think this was an opportunity to revisit that subject area and just get a hold on it. I appreciate you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Bears. Any further discussion on this item? We do have a motion on the floor to deny rezoning by Mr. Bears and a second by Mr. Collins. Any further discussion? Any objection? That item is denied. All right. So item 12, consideration of adopting the ordinance of approving the following. 11. How did I jump ahead that far? All right, item 11, consideration of adopting an ordinance approving the following rezoning application, 5393 Big Lake Road in Ward 3 to rezone from light commercial C1 to light industrial to allow industrial development.
Move to approve rezoning with conditions.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Brame to approve with conditions and a second by Mr. Scott.
And I also have another motion. Do we need to act on that motion first? Okay, I need to move to restate conditions number 2 and number 4 as follows. Yeah, no. 3 and 4. That fencing or screening must be installed as illustrated on the screening plan in accordance with Section 26-50 of the Parish Code of Ordinances within 30 days of approval. Item 4, that installation of screening near the drainage lateral must receive approval from the applicable gravity drainage district to ensure that no encroachment on easements. And number 5, that all machinery and supplies must be stored within required screened area.
Second that.
We have the motion to add those stipulations by Mr. Brame and a second by Mr. Scott. Any further discussion? Any objection? Hear none, that carries.
Main motion.
Now, do we have any discussion on the main motion, which is to approve rezoning? Any objection? Hear none, it is rezoned with conditions. 12, consideration of adopting an ordinance approving the following rezoning application, 213 Goodman Road in Ward 3, to rezone from mixed residential R2 to light industrial to allow industrial development.
Move to approve zoning with stipulation.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Collins to approve rezoning with stipulations and a second by Mr. Latour. Any discussion? Any objection? 12 carries. 13, consideration of adopting an ordinance approving the following rezoning application, 2600 block of Pujol Road in Ward 8 to rezone from agricultural A1 to general commercial C2 to allow commercial development. We have a motion by Mr. Latour to approve rezoning with stipulations and a second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? Any objection? 13 carries. 14, consideration of adopting a resolution supporting the Mud Lake South Marsh creation and Cameron Meadows East Marsh creation for Phase 1 funding. I have a motion by Mr. Abshire and a second by Mr. Bears. Any discussion? Any objection? 14 carries. 15, consideration of adopting a resolution approving a cooperative endeavor agreement between the police jury and the city of Sulphur for the transfer of ownership of property located at 2396 Tammy Drive, Sulphur, to the city. I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Latour. Any discussion? Any objection? Item carries. 16, consideration of adopting an ordinance rescinding the following ordinances. A, ordinance number 4078 and ordinance 6022. I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Gilreed. Do we have any discussion? Any objection? 16 carries. 17, consideration of authorizing the parish administrator to advertise for applications for the position of Calcasieu Parish Registrar of Voters. Mr. Bean.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is something that has come upon us quickly, and with your approval, I'd like to give a little bit of background and then what's before you tonight and what's coming. Let me say at first that at the start that Angie Quinalty was appointed by the police jury, the current registrar, as Registrar of Voters in May of 1995, so it was about 25 years ago. Angie has been an excellent Registrar of Voters. She took that office to new levels, and she's consistently been good, and she is somebody we certainly are going to miss there. What has transpired is we received a letter, I believe it was last Friday, from her, stating that she is going to retire effective March 23rd, which is Saturday coming. And once that happens with a registrar of voters, this is all per state law, the police jury has to get involved. I had a chance to talk with Angie early this week regarding her decision, and obviously without going into a lot of detail, but I think many of you know, she's been struggling with a pretty serious illness. And she said it was simply time for her to step back from the workload and retire. She has a lot of respect for the police jury. She knows that the process for appointing a replacement will be handled well. So what happens now? State law sets all the requirements, as I mentioned, for this vacancy. The first issue is the immediate one, is Angie's immediate replacement on an interim basis, which by law is to be the deputy registrar. That is an actual position in the law. In Calcasieu Parish, this is Kim Fontenot. She is the deputy registrar, and she will become interim registrar effective March 24th, the day after the retirement that Ms. Quinalty put in her letter. No actions needed by the police jury for this. She assumes that. The parish governing authority, you, is responsible for filling the permanent position. First thing you need to do is approve the advertising for applications for the position, and that's what's on your agenda tonight. Once approved tonight, the first ad will run in the official journal tomorrow, which is the American Press, and it's in accordance with state law. It's a prominent ad. It'll be very noticeable. And we also have to put it on the website and so forth. The same ad will run a week from tomorrow. Applications will be received through April 5th at noon. This will all be in the ad. By state law, the police jury has 30 days after the date on which the vacancy occurs to fill the position. So it's 30 days from March 23rd. So it's quick. So that's an overview of the timeline. I have one more request, and this is simply, I had a chance after all this happened to speak with President White on all of this. And afterwards, based on those discussions, at this time I would ask that the police jury consider amending the motion on the floor simply to add, not to change anything, to add the following, and I'll read it. That the police jury approve the president's appointment of an ad hoc registrar of voters interview committee, just named for what your purpose is, who will be responsible for reviewing applications received by the deadline with the intent of narrowing the field of applications down to approximately 3 to 5 of the most qualified candidates for consideration as finalists to be voted on by the full jury. With assistance from the Administrator, Director of Human Resources, and Parish Secretary, the ad hoc committee would offer to interview applicants who meet the qualifications provided by law for the office of Registrar of Voters. One last thing, the proposed amendment would also include appointing the following members to this ad hoc committee, in addition to President White. He would be on it: Brian Abshire, Francis Andrepont, Shelley Mayo, and Hal McMillan. And Mr. President, that concludes my comments. I'm happy to answer any questions. I do want to mention Kim Fontenot is in the audience tonight. Dane and I had a chance to meet with her today, and simply because she's going to be effective Saturday, the interim registrar, we appreciate her time, and just wanted to recognize that.
Mr. Collins, would you like to amend your motion on the floor to the statement, Mr. Beam? Do we have a second by Mr. Abshire for the amended version?
Yes, sir, second.
We have discussion. Mr. Farnham.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, that's a pretty quick time frame, 30 days, to take applications and interview and everything. And this is an appointment for life, right? Or
Yes.
Until retirement.
I think it used to be 10 days, if you can
aggressive.
believe it. We can thank Mr. Danahay for the, and I mean this seriously, excuse me for interrupting, but so you'll know, he pushed a lot of improvements to what is in state law to make this a little bit more thought out on qualifications and so forth. But I'm sorry, I didn't.
Are there any circumstances that would extend it, or is this
No,
etched in
I had
stone?
that question and the answer is no. I do feel good though. It is a lot of work in a short period, but we have sat down internally and worked a calendar out to where I think we can accomplish it, but it will take, you know, a lot of work in a fairly quick manner, but there's plenty of time for good candidates to be vetted and so forth.
There's no room for a lot of hiccups, but,
No.
but you feel confident that we can do
Yes, sir.
an adequate job.
Yeah, and just kind of along your question, if things go as our current calendar's working, and we need the next week to finalize all this, we hope we can put this item on your April 17th agenda for consideration. If there needs to be, for whatever reason, y'all need to discuss it a little longer, we could call a special meeting early that following week and still make the deadline. So I think we're fine.
Well, hopefully Angie, when she announced her retirement date, she kind of had our police jury schedule in front of her then.
Honestly, no matter what, it's like as soon as it happens, it kicks in. So she really, I think anytime she'd have told us, it still would have been quick. But you're right, it is a quick turnaround.
Prayers are with Angie and her battles, and I yield.
Morning, Ms. Guidry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I just want to say that Angie has been a friend to all of us here because, I mean, anytime you needed something, she was always there. And, I mean, it was always on point as to what we needed as elected officials. And Angie is truly going to be missed because of just her added personal touch to how she treated us. I mean, there's nothing that she wouldn't do for us as elected officials. And we just want to say to Angie, we're going to keep her in our prayers, and we love her dearly. Thank you, Mr. President.
Ms. Guidry.
Mr. President, can I just add one thing? Jessica reminded me, on your behalf, we're sending a certificate recognizing her retirement and thanking her for all her service, and it echoes what Mr. Farnham and Mr. Guidry and others have said. So we will follow up with that.
Sir, do we have any further discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 17 will carry with stipulations, or with the added amendments. 18, consideration of adopting a resolution in support of the City of Lake Charles' request that the State of Louisiana Department of Transportation Development evaluate safety concerns and turn signals at the intersection of Highway 171, Martin Luther King Highway, and Moling Street. I have a motion by Mr. Guidry and a second by Mr. Gilry. Any discussion? Any objection? Oh, we do have discussion. Mr. Gilry.
This is going to be quick. I just want to say that that is a very hard turn to come off the interstate, to turn to go west on Moreland Street, and I know the state have been working on it, and I just want to thank you, fellas.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good job.
Any further discussion? Any objection? 18 carries. 19, consideration of adopting a resolution approving a grant adjustment to increase the grant award for the Job Awareness Reverse Commute JRC program. I have a motion by Mr. Abshire and a second by Mr. Bears. Any objection or any further discussion? Any objection? Item carries. 20, take appropriate action on the mosquito control hangar door project. The staff recommends that the low responsive quote in the amount of $124,900 of Pat Williams Construction, Inc. be accepted. I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Latour. We have discussion, Mr. Landry.
What happened on the east bid was obviously 118.7. This is 124.9, so I know it says responsive. So what was the issue in a nutshell?
Mr. Landry, if I can answer that, the Sammy's Construction submitted by email, and it has to be submitted by mail or in person.
Wow.
Excuse me, sealed bid. Thank you.
Well, they won't do that again. I've made, well, not that exact mistake, but I have done that before. And yeah, I only did it once. Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you for asking that question, Mr. Landry, and thank you for clarification, Mr. Bean. 21, consideration of adopting a resolution.
We didn't take
Second.
action.
Oh, sorry about that. Any further discussion? Any objection? Item carries. 21, consideration of adopting a resolution accepting Prien
Move
Lake
to
Park
adopt.
Boat Launch Extension
Second.
Project substantially complete. I have a motion by Mr. Brame and a second by Mr. Abshire. Do we have any discussion? Any objection? Item carries. 22, consideration adopting a resolution of condolences to be forwarded
So
to the
moved.
family of the late Joseph Withers. I have a motion by Mr. Landry and a second by Mr. Scott. Do we have any discussion? Mr. LaTour.
I spoke to Ms. Trimmy earlier, since she couldn't be here because she was sick. She just wanted to pretty much say that I guess Mr. Joseph was involved in bringing the water to her area, was one of the first boards to put it together, and she wanted to recognize him for that, so just wanted to make that mention. Yield back.
4, any further discussion? Any objection? 22 will carry. 23, consideration of adopting a resolution of condolences to be forwarded to the family of the late Honorable David Riggins, former mayor of the town of Vinton. I have a motion by Mr. Bears and a second by Mr. Farnum. Do we have any discussion? Mr. Bears.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't know Mayor Riggins to the extent that a lot of the folks in Vinton did. I had a good conversation about him the other night with Mayor Kenny Stinson, and the one thing that I took away about David Riggins and his term as mayor of Vinton is Mayor Stinson said he just loved being the mayor of Vinton, and you know he put a lot of time and effort. A lot of people they recognized him. Everybody loved him, but I just wanted to send out our condolences to the family of the late Honorable David Riggins. Thank you.
Mr. Bears, any further discussion? Mr. Landry.
He was a fine gentleman. I mean, he really was, and he brought people together there, and did a great job. I mean, he was good at getting money for him and a lot of grants, and that's what I know he ended up doing many years after he left office. But he was really a good person and did a lot for that area without a doubt, and nice to work with. I mean, you know, never saw him without a smile on his face. So, yeah, he will be missed. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any objection? That item will carry.
Move to adjourn.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. We are adjourned.